It all started with a bowl of lobster bisque. That's what my cousin Andrew said when he dropped the flash drive onto my desk. He's a detective with the Portland PD, works financial and fraud cases, mostly boring stuff. But lately, he'd been reassigned to something new. A task force dealing with a weird wave of restaurant scams. People aren't breaking in or robbing registers, he told me. They're walking in dressed to the nines, ordering $100 bottles of wine, and then blowing up over fake problems. Hair in the food, glass in the salad, undercooked steak, same routine every time. They cause a scene, demand refunds, threaten Yelp bombs or legal action, and walk out with more than a free dinner. He rubbed his temples like he hadn't slept in days. Most restaurants just pay to make them go away. But this last couple, this was different. They didn't just want a refund. They asked for $1,000 in compensation for emotional trauma over a bad shellfish dish. That's when it got our attention. I raised an eyebrow and spun the flash drive between my fingers. "And you want me to recover corrupted footage," he said. "Cradle room. Fancy French place downtown. Their internal camera system glitched halfway through the night, but IT said some data salvageable. You're the best I know at pulling ghosts out of broken drives." I sighed. "You're lucky I like you." He gave me a tired smile. "You find anything that IDs them, send it to me directly. No chain of command, just me." That wasn't standard procedure, but this wasn't a standard case. Andrew didn't trust how some evidence was being handled lately. Restaurant owners were nervous. Some had friends in high places. If this couple was hitting elite spots, someone might try to make it disappear. I plugged the drive into my workstation and launched my recovery tools. Files flickered to life, grainy, black and white footage, timestamped 3 weeks ago. Interior camera wide angle over a row of corner tables. Candlelight flickered. Servers moved in and out of frame. Felt calm. Normal. "Table 11, Andrew said, leaning over my shoulder. "They show up at 7:41 p.m. I moved the playback forward. A man and woman entered the frame, dressed well but not flashy. He wore a dark blazer, no tie. Clean cut, mid-30s. She wore a black dress with a long neckline and carried a small clutch. I felt my chest tighten before I even saw her face. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear as she sat down, smiled as the waiter approached, nodded with that same soft motion I'd seen for years. "Jessica. My wife." I froze. Completely. I didn't need to see her face clearly. I knew that tilt of her head, that way she sat with one leg crossed high over the other, the way her fingers danced around the rim of the water glass. "What's wrong?" Andrew asked, noticing the pause. "Nothing," I said quickly. "Footage just skipped for a second." He squinted. "Yeah, looks like some frame loss. Let me know if you can clean that up." "Sure," I said, voice dry. I zoomed in, watched Jessica lean in close to the man. Their hands touched briefly across the table. They ordered wine, laughed. She whispered something and he nodded like they were in on a secret. 15 minutes in, Jessica suddenly stiffened. She looked at her plate, recoiled slightly, and called over the waiter. Her expression turned horrified. The manager came over. Jessica gestured toward her soup. The man beside her stood up, protective, raising his voice slightly. Andrew pointed. "That's the move. See it? This is the 3rd time we've seen her do that exact motion with different food, different guy. She's good." I swallowed hard. "Yeah," I muttered. "Looks like they've done this before. You think you can clean this up? Get some face detail?" "Absolutely," I said. He clapped my shoulder. "You're a lifesaver." I nodded and watched him walk out. The moment the door clicked shut, I restarted the footage from the top. Then again, and again. It wasn't just a scam. It wasn't just a con. It was my wife, calmly committing fraud with a stranger while I sat at home, thinking she was in a conference room somewhere across town. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. The disbelief wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was how smooth she was at it. Like this wasn't her first time. Like she didn't plan on stopping. And like she thought no one would ever catch her. The next morning, Jessica moved through the kitchen like nothing had changed. She wore her usual pale robe, hair still damp from her shower, slippers whispering against the tile floor. She hummed softly, making her oat milk coffee with a pump of vanilla syrup and 2 ice cubes, just like always. But I wasn't just watching her now. I was studying her. She smiled at me over her shoulder. "You're up early." "Yeah," I said, trying to sound casual. "Had some work come in late." She didn't ask. She rarely did. That used to feel like trust. Now it just felt like distance. "Still heading to Vancouver this weekend?" I asked, sipping from my own mug. She nodded. "Friday to Sunday. Regional strategy thing." Same story she gave me last month. I believed it then. Now I knew better. "You're staying at that place downtown?" I asked. "The Cascade Grand, yeah." She shrugged like it wasn't important. "I know it's overpriced, but they booked it." I didn't have a choice. Of course she didn't. Jessica kissed me goodbye a few minutes later and headed off to work like any other day. I waited until her car pulled out of the driveway, then locked the front door, walked straight into my home office, and sat down at my desk. It was time to dig. I work in cybersecurity. 2 decades of recovering deleted files, flagging hidden networks, tracing footprints people think are invisible. You spend enough years doing that, and you learn the golden rule. Nothing digital ever really disappears. I started with our home router logs. I'd already set up a passive DNS capture system on the back end, part hobby, part paranoia. It kept records of every device that connected, including timestamps and app behavior. Jessica's phone had pinged several known encrypted apps over the last 2 months, mostly Signal, some Proton Mail, all routed through Wi-Fi. At times she was supposedly in meetings or catching up on emails. But that was just the beginning. Jessica's old iPad, the one she hadn't used in over a year, was still logged into her iCloud account. She never bothered to disable it. I booted it up and let it sync. 30 seconds later, I had full access to her calendar, app activity, and even a handful of backup files from third-party services. That's where I found them, entries labeled with vague names like Client Roundtable and Quarterly Review. Every one of them landed on a weekend. Every one of them in a city where Andrew's task force had reported a restaurant scam. One entry stuck out. MD Strategy Review, 7 p.m. The initials clicked immediately. Mark Douglas. I didn't know the name yet, but I remembered the guy from the video. Mid-30s, clean-cut, watch on his left wrist. Confident, smooth, the kind of guy who could lie with a smile. The same guy Jessica had dinner with at the Cradle Room. I searched Jessica's messages, but there were no conversations with anyone named Mark or Douglas. Signal was too secure, no history, no backups. But her photos told a different story. Buried in a folder of synced camera uploads were several seemingly harmless shots. Restaurant tables, glasses of wine, elegant desserts. Nothing with people. Nothing overt. But I pulled the metadata. And metadata never lies. Photo 1, Seattle, 2 weeks ago. Same night, a high-end steakhouse reported a complaint involving sharp plastic in risotto and a $500 settlement. Photo 2, Spokane. Empty wine glass. Timestamp the same evening a manager refunded 2 bottles of Bordeaux after a customer claimed their server had pushed alcohol too aggressively. Photo 3, Cascade Grand, downtown Vancouver. Lobby shot. Jessica's phone had geotagged it at exactly 7:43 p.m. The same time she claimed she was heading to bed early after networking. I enlarged one image, a wine glass reflecting a distorted face across the table. Barely visible, but the jawline, the hair, the left wristwatch. It matched the man from the video. Mark Douglas. That was all I needed. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence fill the room. The evidence wasn't circumstantial anymore. Jessica wasn't just stepping out on me. She was part of something orchestrated, organized, criminal. Whether she was doing it for the thrill or the money didn't matter. She'd crossed a line, and I had everything I needed to prove it. But I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. Because once you reveal, the lies multiply. The crocodile tears start. The guilt gets weaponized. I wasn't going to let that happen. This wasn't about emotions anymore. This was about facts. And I intended to collect every single one. By the next morning, I had a new goal. Find out exactly who Mark Douglas was, and what he meant to Jessica. I wasn't looking for closure. I was building a case. After 2 decades in IT security, you develop a kind of sixth sense for patterns. things most people don't even notice. Habits, overlaps, behaviors that repeat. If Jessica had partnered with this guy more than once, they'd left a trail. And I was going to follow it. I started with the digital fingerprint I already had, the iCloud metadata and the calendar entry labeled MD Strategy Review. The initials were a gift, lazy, confident, like they didn't think anyone would ever see behind the curtain. I dug into the calendar backups from her iPad. Hidden in one of the older sync files, I found a contact entry, just initials again, MD82, with a signal handle linked to a burner number. No full name, no profile photo, no other details, except one. That Signal account had once connected to the Cascade Grand's Wi-Fi network using hotel credentials. And hotel Wi-Fi, it logs everything. Jessica didn't know that when she FaceTimed me from that trip, smiling in her hotel robe, she'd also allowed her device to ping dozens of back-end systems I'd already mirrored into my passive scan logs. A Signal connection went live that night, same timestamp as her call, same IP range, same device signature. But the conversation wasn't with me. I ran the handle MD82 through a few of my private threat intel databases. These aren't public search engines. These are tools I built for private sector audits, cybersecurity contracts, and, let's just say, favors for friends in law enforcement. And that's when I got my hit. The Signal account was linked to a Gmail clone account, and Strategy 82. No social media, no photos, but someone had used it to order food from a luxury delivery service in Seattle. One of the delivery confirmations had been forwarded to another email, Douglas.Mark.1987. That was it. The real name, Mark Douglas. I felt it like a click behind the eyes. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. I had a name, person, a traceable entity. I fed it into one of Andrew's older law enforcement tools I'd helped develop. Technically, I shouldn't have still had access. But technically, people shouldn't con restaurants and sleep with married women, either. The profile came back in under a minute. Mark Douglas, 37, former restaurant consultant, fired twice for contract breaches. No criminal convictions, but multiple sealed HR complaints from former employers. One file involved a female coworker who left abruptly after a joint assignment. Another noted unethical persuasion tactics involving clients and customer incentives. He was clean on paper, but too clean. The kind of clean that gets scrubbed when someone has friends in the right places, or knows how to disappear. He had no home listed, no fixed address, just hotel records, car rentals, and a half-dozen temporary numbers, all tied to restaurants that later reported unresolved customer disputes. The pattern was there. Jessica hadn't just stumbled into something reckless. She was partnered with a professional scam artist, someone who ran plays, coached lines, staged scenes. And she was playing her part beautifully. I scrolled through her calendar again. 9 entries matched restaurant dispute dates reported in Andrew's internal notes. 9. That's not coincidence. That's a business. I went back to the footage from the cradle room and slowed it down. I studied Jessica's face again, every micro-expression. She wasn't faking fear. She was performing it. There's a difference. I could see it now. The timing of her reactions, the pauses, the hand motions, rehearsed. They'd done this before, probably dozens of times. And with each successful incident, they got bolder. This wasn't about saving money. This was about adrenaline, manipulation, control. Jessica used to joke that she could have been an actress. I never imagined she'd prove it by scamming sommeliers and cozying up to a man who disappeared after dessert. I saved everything into a new subfolder under the Laura archive. This one labeled MD profile verified. That night she came home late, said she had a client dinner that ran long, kissed me on the cheek, smelled faintly of red wine and expensive cologne, not the one I wear. She curled up next to me in bed like nothing had changed, asked me if I could pick up dry cleaning the next day, and I said sure, because I wasn't done yet. I wasn't confronting her. I was cataloging her, and when the truth finally hit her, it wouldn't be with shouting. It would be with silence and proof. By Friday morning, I had everything I needed to make a move, but I wasn't going to explode. No shouting, no dramatic confrontation. I'd seen how that played out in other people's lives, and it always gave the liar a chance to twist the story, to cry, to beg, to say, it's not what you think. I didn't want emotion. I wanted impact. Jessica was packing in the bedroom, carefully folding blouses into her suitcase like this was just another work weekend. She chatted about hotel Wi-Fi speeds and conference coffee. I stood in the doorway, pretending to listen. I might stop by that little bookstore near the hotel if I finish early, she said, zipping up the case. You know the one I like? The one next to the wine bar? I asked. Yeah. She smiled. You remember? Of course I remembered. She wasn't going for books. She was going for him. You got your charger? I asked. She nodded. And the presentation files. Don't worry. I've got everything. She always said that. And this time she didn't even realize how right she was. At 9:12 a.m., she left. At 9:17, I inserted a flash drive into my desktop tower and opened the folder I'd been building all week, the digital coffin. Inside it was everything. Restaurant footage with Jessica and Mark caught mid-con. Timestamps linked to reservation data. Metadata from her own photos showing location and time. Matching profiles between MD82 and Mark Douglas. A cross-reference chart comparing her calendar to known scam reports. Even snippets from security footage where Mark's wristwatch, always on his left hand, glinted in the candlelight. It was bulletproof. It didn't suggest what she was doing. Proved it. But I didn't want this tied back to me. If I turned it in as her husband, she'd say it was jealousy. A vendetta. I needed a clean handoff, so I made a copy of the archive. Removed all traces of my digital ID, metadata, and system stamps. I even edited the PDFs to scrub out my name. Then I printed a slim index of the file structure, added a simple message, typed, not handwritten. Restaurant fraud pattern, primary suspect attached. Confidential lead. I sealed everything in a plain manila envelope and labeled it, Detective A, Cross, Fraud Unit. Then I drove across town, parked in a lot across from the precinct, and waited until foot traffic cleared. When the moment came, I walked into the building like I belonged there. Dark jeans, black hoodie, sunglasses, and dropped the envelope into the after-hours intake box. No one saw me. Back home, I scrubbed my tracks, deleted temporary logs, cleared device history, wiped the temporary print queue, rebooted everything. Then I opened the original archive and saved a second backup, encrypted, locked, and titled simply, Jessica, Final. By late afternoon, I got the text from her. Made it safe. Conference check-in was smooth. Love you. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Then I locked the phone and placed it face down on the desk. No reply. Let the silence do the talking. I didn't need to say anything, because somewhere across town or maybe across the state, Andrew would open that envelope. And when he did, he'd see it for what it was. A fully built case, wrapped in evidence. Jessica wasn't on a business trip. She was walking into a trap. And this time, the trap had her name written all over it. I spent most of that weekend in silence. No calls, no texts, no emails. I didn't check social media. I didn't go out. I barely ate. I just waited. Friday passed without a word. Saturday too. But early Sunday morning, 6:27 a.m., to be exact, my phone buzzed. It was a number I recognized immediately. A department line. I picked up without a greeting. It's me, Andrew said. His voice was low, focused. It's happening. That was all I needed. They're there now, I asked. We moved in 30 minutes ago. Surveillance team watched them sit down at a place called Autumn and Ash. High-end spot, reservation only, just like the last ones. Same routine, order the priciest bottle of wine on the menu, make a scene halfway through. And they didn't make it to dessert. He sounded almost impressed. You were right, he said. It's them. Your package filled every gap. The faces, the names, the timestamps. DA's office greenlit the takedown. We caught them red-handed. Jessica had walked straight into it. Did she resist? I asked. No, Andrew said. She played dumb at first. Said she was just there for dinner. Claimed the complaint was real. But we already had the footage from the prior scams you flagged. Patterns too clear. Mark ran, bolted out the back when he saw the uniforms. Didn't make it far. And her. He paused. Quiet. Nervous. Said she didn't understand what was going on. That she didn't know it was a scam. She's lying, I said flatly. I know she is, so do the prosecutors. But she's a first-time offender on paper. Mark's got priors sealed but known. He's going to take the fall. She's likely looking at probation, fines, maybe some community service. I leaned back in my chair, the room spinning slightly. Not from shock, from release, from the weight that had been sitting on my chest for weeks finally lifting. She asked if someone set her up, Andrew added after a beat. Said the whole thing felt like a setup. It wasn't a setup, I said. It was the truth, finally showing up. He didn't respond right away. I could hear chatter in the background, voices, police radios, footsteps on tile. The sting was still in motion. You did the right thing, he said at last. Even if it hurt. It doesn't hurt anymore, I said. And I meant it. By the time I hung up, the sun was rising through the blinds. Golden light poured into the office, hitting the corner of the desk where I kept a framed photo of Jessica and me from 2 years ago, one of our last vacations together. Napa Valley. Laughing in a vineyard. I turned the frame face down. It wasn't anger. It wasn't revenge. It was closure. She had made her choice, and now the consequences had caught up. Jessica didn't come home Sunday night. Not that I expected her to. I knew from Andrew that they'd processed her and released her later that evening. No cuffs. No press. Just a quiet walk out the back of the precinct with a court summons and a shaken look on her face. She wasn't held overnight. First-time offenders rarely are. But that didn't mean she walked away clean. I checked my phone once. 1 missed call. No voicemail. I didn't call back. By Monday morning, she still hadn't shown up. The house was quiet. The kind of quiet that seeps into your bones and makes every creak in the floorboards feel like a question. I made my coffee, took out the trash, answered work emails, normal things. But none of it felt real. Around noon I got a text. Can I come by to get a few things? I didn't reply right away. I thought about it. Then I typed 2 words. Front doors open. No emojis. No greeting. No signature. Just space for her to walk in, take what was hers, and leave. She showed up an hour later. I heard the car pull into the driveway. Then the soft click of the door opening. She didn't call my name. Didn't say hello. Just walked in slowly, her steps uncertain. She looked smaller, like someone who'd been shrunk by the weight of reality. No makeup, hair pulled back, clothes wrinkled, and for the first time in years, she didn't walk through the house like she owned it. She walked like a stranger. I just came to grab a few things, she said quietly, barely looking at me. I figured. She moved around the living room slowly, took her tablet, a sweater, some notebooks from the cabinet, avoided my eyes. I stayed seated on the couch, watching calmly. After a few minutes, she stopped in the hallway, looked at a photo on the wall, one of us and her parents at a cabin upstate. Her fingers hovered near it for a second, but she didn't take it. Instead, she turned to me. Is this really happening? She asked. I didn't answer. Not immediately. You tell me, I said eventually. I didn't think it would go that far, she said. I don't know what I thought. That it would stay secret? I asked. That you'd keep walking into 5-star restaurants with a guy who lies for a living and somehow keep everything else untouched? She looked down. I didn't plan it like that. I stood up slowly, crossed the room until I stood a few feet from her. You didn't just lie to me, I said. You partnered with someone to manipulate people. You stole, over and over, and you used your marriage as your alibi. Her eyes filled, but no tears fell. I never stopped loving you, she said. You stopped respecting me, I replied. A long time ago. Silence fell again. Heavy. Final. She nodded once, turned, and walked to the door. She paused there like she might say something else, but she didn't. She left, and for the first time in months the house felt honest. Empty, but honest. The fallout didn't come with a bang. Came in waves. By Wednesday, Jessica's employer had placed her on administrative leave. Pending internal review, they called it. She didn't tell me that directly. Andrew heard it through one of his contacts in the city's legal network. Word spreads fast when it involves a fraud case and someone in middle management. She wasn't arrested in front of coworkers, but the whispers were loud enough. People knew. Thursday afternoon, I got a visit from her friend Marissa. She stood on the porch with a folded sweater and a confused expression. "Is she okay?" she asked after a long pause. I shrugged. "You'd have to ask her. She hasn't said much," Marissa admitted. "Just that things went wrong. That someone betrayed her." I raised an eyebrow. "Betrayed?" "She didn't explain," she said. "I'm not trying to get in the middle of anything." "I'm not sure there's a middle to get into," I said. "There's just what happened." Marissa left the sweater and walked away without another word. I had no doubt she'd go straight back to Jessica, and I didn't care. Let them talk. Let the story morph. The truth was on paper now. By the weekend, Jessica had stopped texting altogether. I didn't chase her. I spent Saturday clearing out the house. Not in anger, just necessity. I boxed up her books, her toiletries, the things she'd left behind in drawers and closets. I didn't throw anything away. I wasn't petty. I just packed it all and stacked it neatly by the door. The dining table felt bigger now, the bedroom quieter, the couch less crowded. It wasn't loneliness, it was space, and I needed it. Sunday afternoon I went for a walk, first time in weeks. No destination, just movement. The air smelled like wet pine and sidewalks, and the clouds hung low over the rooftops like a lid. I ended up at the coffee shop near the park, ordered a drink, sat near the window, and that's where I saw her, Jessica, sitting 2 tables away, alone, staring into a black coffee she hadn't touched. Her eyes were ringed with dark circles. Her coat looked slept in. Her phone sat on the table, dark screen, no movement. She didn't see me, and I didn't say anything. I just watched her for a moment. This woman who once ran schemes and wine rooms like a stage actress, now hunched and silent, like someone waiting for something that wasn't coming. She looked lost, and for the first time I didn't feel angry. I felt done. She had made her choices. She had built the lie brick by brick, and now she was sitting inside it, wondering why the light couldn't get in. I left the coffee shop without finishing my drink, because I wasn't part of her story anymore. I was already writing a new one. The consequences came quietly. No dramatic courtroom speech, no headlines, no handcuffs in front of reporters. Just a Monday morning hearing in a gray county courthouse where everyone already knew how the story ended. Jessica pled guilty to misdemeanor fraud and conspiracy to defraud a business. It wasn't the worst charge she could have faced, but it wasn't nothing either. Andrew texted me the night before. "She's taking a deal. 2 years probation. Community service. $5,000 fine. No jail time. Just enough to leave a permanent bruise." She flipped on Mark Douglas to get the deal. Handed over texts, email aliases, instructions he'd sent her about how to build a good performance at a restaurant. Claimed he trained her on how to spot distracted servers, manipulate the wine list, how to cry on cue. Jessica painted herself as misguided, overwhelmed, and pressured. Said she was drawn in before she understood what it was. Of course she was. She was always good at playing roles. When Andrew told me the full story later, I didn't get angry. Not anymore. I just listened, quietly, letting the facts settle where they landed. She said she never meant for it to hurt anyone, Andrew told me. Said she thought the restaurants could handle it. That it was victimless. Victimless. That word stuck with me. She didn't think about the small business owner eating the cost, the waiter losing tips when a table left unpaid, the assistant manager who got written up for not catching a fake complaint. No, she thought it was clever, smooth, stylish. I suppose it was until someone held up a mirror. As part of her sentencing, she had to serve 180 hours of community service. Trash detail, mostly. Cleaning parks, public lots, sometimes the walking trails along the Willamette. Andrew spotted her once, out near Maple Trail, orange vest over a gray hoodie, pushing a grabber stick into damp leaves while joggers passed her without looking. She looked tired, he said. Didn't make eye contact, just kept her head down. I didn't go see it for myself. I didn't need to. Her job let her go the same week she was sentenced. They didn't make a public statement. Didn't have to. Her name disappeared from the website. Her email bounced. Word spread quickly through the Portland professional scene. Whispers in HR departments. Quiet red flags on background checks. A friend from my industry called me up a few days later. She applied here, he said. Didn't mention anything about the arrest. but it came up during screening. Did she get an interview? He hesitated. No. I nodded. That's probably for the best. She tried, though. I'll give her that. She sent out resumes, updated her LinkedIn, switched to a profile photo with a softer background. Probably thought she could clean up the narrative, sell the version where she was just an unlucky bystander caught in someone else's plan. But the problem with cleaning up a story is that truth stains deep. I got a letter from her lawyer about a week later. Brief, formal. She was waiving all claims to the house, the bank accounts, the retirement fund. No alimony requests, no division of assets, just a line that read, "My client has no intention to pursue financial restitution or shared holdings." I signed and mailed it back the same day. No hesitation, no reply. I wondered briefly if she thought that was redemption, giving up the money, not fighting for anything. But it didn't feel redemptive, felt like surrender. And honestly, that was fine by me. Some people expect revenge to be loud. Court battles, screaming matches, public exposure. But the best revenge, the kind that truly sticks, is watching someone who thought they were in control slowly realize they've lost everything. Not because you took it away, but because they threw it all in the trash and thought no one would notice. Jessica noticed now. She noticed when her phone stopped ringing, when interviewers went cold, when neighbors started avoiding eye contact in the grocery store, when she had to park her car blocks away from city property and put on that vest with her name on a clipboard, supervised by a teenager getting college credit for volunteer oversight. And me? I felt peace. Not joy. Not triumph. Just a kind of clean emptiness. The mess was no longer mine to fix. The consequences had arrived, and they were hers to carry. Jessica didn't disappear completely after the sentencing, but she may as well have. She moved into a small one-bedroom apartment across the river. I only knew because I saw the forwarding address on one of the court documents. No washer. No dryer. The kind of place you rent when you're not sure how long you'll be able to afford the rent. She stopped texting altogether after the paperwork was finalized. I didn't reach out either. There was nothing left to say. The last real conversation we had was 3 weeks after her sentencing. She came by the house to pick up a few remaining boxes, old books, winter coats, a sewing machine she hadn't touched in years. She didn't ring the bell, just walked in quietly, using the key I hadn't yet changed. I was in the living room. She froze when she saw me, like maybe she'd hoped to avoid the encounter. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey," I replied just as flat. She looked different, thinner, eyes darker under the weight of sleepless nights. The confident posture she used to carry around like a badge was gone. She moved carefully now, like someone always waiting to be struck. "I'll be quick," she said, not making eye contact. I nodded and said nothing more. She walked upstairs, pulled a few things from the closet, made 2 trips to the car. On the second trip back in, she stood in the doorway for a moment, lingering. "I know I messed everything up," she said quietly. I didn't look up from the paperwork I was sorting. "I wasn't thinking straight when it started," she continued. "It was supposed to be fun, just once. I didn't expect it to take over." I said nothing. He made it feel exciting, like we were smarter than everyone else. She paused. I think I liked being someone else for a while. That was probably the closest she'd come to honesty in months. She waited, like she hoped I'd offer her some kind of answer. Forgiveness, maybe. Closure. I gave her neither. Eventually, she spoke again. "You never yelled. You never even fought back. Why?" I finally looked at her. "Because I wasn't going to let you control the ending too." She blinked at that, swallowed, looked away. She placed her old house key on the counter and walked toward the door. "I never stopped loving you," she said one last time. I didn't reply, just watched her leave. The door closed behind her with a soft click that felt more final than the divorce itself. After that, she faded from my world. Friends we used to share chose sides, some quietly, some more clearly. Most drifted away from her, unsure what to say or how to pretend nothing had happened. A few stayed neutral, but even they admitted it felt different now. Her presence carried a tension none of them could ignore. A mutual friend told me she'd been applying for jobs out of state. Remote work, mostly. No one local would touch her resume. That kind of scandal, even without formal charges on record, hangs in the air like smoke. People smell it. She sold her car to cover fines and back rent, gave up her gym membership, stopped posting online. Her old social media profiles, once full of vacation shots, smiling brunch photos, filtered selfies with captions like, "Work hard, treat yourself harder," went dark. One afternoon in early spring, I ran into her by accident. I was in line at a grocery store, buying a few things for dinner. She was 2 registers over, holding a small basket, eggs, bread, instant coffee. She didn't see me at first. She looked worn, not just tired but older, like whatever wind she once had in her sails had long since died out. We locked eyes for just a second. She froze, then looked away. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I just turned back to my cart and paid for my groceries. She was gone by the time I stepped outside, and that was the last time I saw her. Later that night, I got a voicemail from an unknown number. Her voice, quiet, strained. "Hey, I saw you today. I hope you're okay. I hope life's better for you now. That's all." I deleted the message without listening to the rest, because what she hoped for no longer mattered. She had made her choices. She had lived the lie, and now she was living the silence. It wasn't punishment. It was the echo of everything she'd thrown away.